I've lost weight. My leg muscles have just gone downhill. I used to cheat death every single time I took a step. All right. Okay, so homework assignment was to actually write this app we've been designing, right? How'd that go? Crap?
Better app for help?
I have one question from like a general. So we have like we have tables on 3 different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you use the same like DiceRoller class that we were using for each of them?
Absolutely.
Then how do I have to link, like, so I have a label in each of them? Do I then have to link that label as like the label 1, the label 2, the label 3?
Well, the label is linked to the DiceRoll class as outlets, right?
Yes.
Okay, so like for here, we have our dice row. These guys are outlets. You would create your table on each of those 3 screens. You would say that guy is a dice row, and then, but you're linking those guys to this, not the interface controller. So all 3 pages, they're going to be linked to the exported value of dice row. So if we come in here, let's just view this real quick, because I'm actually going to do this as a separate kind of lineage of views. I think I started doing that last time. So I'm going to grab a new interface controller. We'll drop this guy out here. And he's going to be our new starting point. All right, and then let's go ahead and throw a group here. And we're going to make this group vertical. And then we decided the buttons will be at the top, right? All right, so we'll go ahead and throw our add dice button in here. I promise we're getting to answering your question here in a second. Let's just call this add roll. And then we're going to go ahead and add our table. And we're going to call this table row. It's going to be called, well, we can name it whatever we want. So let's call this guy dice row. Oh, actually, hold on a second. That's our row controller. So group, this is what we want. This guy is of type.
That's the identifier.
Yeah, that's how we uniquely identify it.
Usually call that like cell. And then
But we get this as a dice row. Oh, I'm just being stupid. Okay. Not the first time this week. All right, so we'll give this guy the identifier, whatever we're going to call him, right? So we can call him dice row, but as you said, we've been typically naming these guys cell, just generic cell, right? But then we have to say what class is his support class, and his support class is our dice. I call it lowercase d. Dice row. Where is he? Why isn't he showing up in here? Oh, it's got to be the table. No, it doesn't. It's got to be this. This guy's in the extension. Minus objects. Here. Go right here. Go right here. Yeah, why wasn't it auto-completing that? It seems dumb.
Didn't you have first
Were you
key
doing
capital?
lowercase d?
Yeah, well, I was trying to. Yeah, I was attempting to do lowercase d. Okay, so whatever. So now that guy's connected up. So now when I come over here, I have my outlets that I can connect up to this guy. So I can throw those things in. So then when I have my second screen here, in fact, actually, let's, I think I can cheat. Can't I? Did I actually get a new copy? Yes. All right. So this guy's another dude, and he has his own cell, who's also a dice row, but so he has his own outlets hooked up to that, so that's connecting those guys. But now you actually have to have the image and the label there to actually connect them, but they all get linked up to that. So your question was, can we reuse the same dice row guy here to manage multiple cells? The answer is yes, but those cells don't necessarily have to look identical. They just at least have to have those two values. Well, actually, I guess you don't have to have those two values, but if you want to hook everything up, you have to have those two values.
But that label, the label, I can use for any label that I want on different ones.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I just wanted to do it right.
All right, so we decided that on this first page, so here let's build our skeleton for our application here. Okay, so we decided this first page is going to have a roll button and then a table row of current roles, right? Roles that are built. And then our second screen, so when we click add roll is going to take us to another screen, right? So it's going to take us over here. So we're going to do this as a push using the navigation controller so that we can control going back and forth. So we'll go ahead and do a push there. Now, real quick, just going back to this quiz, what is a singleton? Hopefully you all used it on your homework assignments. What is that guy? Okay, it's a design pattern, that's true. What's the purpose of that design pattern? Go ahead.
For the Trojan design to all be in the same place so that other things can access it.
Okay, so it essentially creates a single global object that all of our interface controllers can view. One guy can throw something up there, another guy can check it, right? So we're using it for communicating between multiple screens by throwing all of our crap in one place, a singleton, a single place. All right, so it's a design pattern that is a fancy way of saying a shared object that everybody can use. And I looked up, and you're right, C# supports static classes that then assume everything inside of it is then static. I don't know why.
It's cool.
I don't know, from a language,
One of the main ways that I've seen it done, they sort of have a singleton messenger class. Is you'll have a messenger class that allows you to throw off events and throw off everything else, and a static class that just kind of communicates to everything else.
Right, I just wonder why they created a specialty thing for it because it ends up becoming misleading, because if you have, the punchline there was when you create a static class, then everything in that class does not have to be specified as being static. So when somebody glances at a method, so let's say you have a class that's 600 methods long, an extreme example, right? Okay, 600 methods long, and method way down here is the one we're looking at. It doesn't have static in front. You assume you call it one way when you actually call it another way because you inherited its staticness from the class itself. So it seems like that could lead you down some misleading paths. I just don't know the
Error handling is actually pretty good in that.
could be. I just don't know what the purpose. Like what would be the motivation from a language designer's perspective to say, you know what, let's just go ahead and allow them to make a class that by default must have static stuff in it. When you already have a tool that lets you kind of do whatever you want without really a whole lot of side effects.
In Swift, you can just straight up call a static variable in a class without having to instantiate the class.
Oh, sure.
So
Yeah, that's the definition of a static class.
Yeah,
That's a definition of a class that has a static member.
Right. So they're doing the same thing, except for you just don't have to call it.
Great, but you can do it the other way too. In C#, you can create a normal class filled up with static members, and it works just like Swift.
Yeah.
So whether you create a normal class and fill it up with static members, or you create a static class and fill it up with normal members that end up becoming static, they're equivalent solutions. I just wonder why it exists. Unimportant, just I did look into it, and you're right, it does exist. Okay, so we decided that this first page is going to have this this roll guy, this add roll button. It's going to take us to the second page. The second page is going to have a list of potential dice. Okay, and we decided that that guy is going to be presented in what way? Or maybe I left it up to you. Is that going to be the type of dice? Is this going to be a picker, or is this going to be a...
I think, yeah, you said table.
Yeah, we said table for the second.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so we're going to have a thing to select the dice, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to throw a label in here. Let's do this. So one thing I'm going to attempt to do as we write this is I'm going to attempt to make this, to show you how I might write this if we were really putting it on the App Store, because we kind of want to go down that path. So I'm going to do this in a little bit more object-oriented manner than maybe we've been doing up to this point. So I'm going to throw a label in here. And let's go ahead and center the label. We'll change its text to pick a... Let's just say pick a dice. Okay, like that. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to throw a table in here. So let's get to our table. And again, I'm putting all this inside of a group. So there's our table. And we decided that we're going to call this guy cell. All right, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to make our table an instance of, what is use our dice row again? We have an image and we have a label. Makes pretty good sense. All right, so let's make that guy a dice row. See, I promise it's not caps locked. It's just very interesting. All right, so there's our dice row. So we probably should have used uppercase naming convention for our classes, as I've always taught, but we didn't. So that's, I guess, yeah, whatever. All right, so that's our dice row. And so that means we need to go ahead and throw a image and a label on here, right? So we'll go ahead and throw our image in there. And let's go ahead and make our image take up 50% or so, with fixed 50, and then let's have our throw a label in there. Fixed 50. Go ahead and spread that guy out. All right, so we'll go ahead and click on our cell here, go to our outlets, hook up the outlet for our image, hook up the outlet for our label. So now we've got those guys selected, right? So now let's go ahead and let's set up that table. We want to set it up kind of in the right place. So let me ask you this question. Is this table always going to look the same? Every single time we ever, and that was 5 evers, come to this page, will this table look identical? It'll show our D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, D20, D100. So it'll show those dice every single time, right? So we only want to set this table up once, as opposed to the problem we had to solve on this first screen, where our table is in motion, right? When we first start the app, we have no stored roles. Then once we add a role, now we have one stored role. Once we add another role, we have another stored role. So this table here needs to get rebuilt every single time we come to this page, right? All right, so that dictates where we build our tables. On this screen, we're probably going to build our tables when the screen's about to activate. The other screen, we can build, actually I want to make sure I use the right phrases here. So the other screen, we're going to do it when we awake with context. The other, and then the first screen, second screen is awake with context since we're only doing it once. First screen, we'll do it on will activate because we want to do it every single time that this screen is about to set up. Okay? So now what I'm going to do here is let's go ahead and create a couple more files. So I'm going to create a new file. It's going to be a watch kit class. Next, this guy is going to be a WK interface controller type. And we're going to call this guy main screen IC. Okay, and we'll go ahead and add him to our extension. I'm going to go back out to our storyboard here, and we're going to go ahead and set this guy up as being a main screen. So he's no longer a generic guy, he's now a main screen. Okay, now we're going to create another interface controller for this guy, and this guy is maybe going to be called Dice Select Screen. All right, so we're going to right click, new file, watch kit class. We'll call this Dice Select Screen IC. Hit next, add it, go back into our interface builder, click here, select the right place, Dice Select Screen. Okay. Lastly, we're going to have another interface builder. Or another interface controller, rather. All right, and we'll go ahead and throw our group in here. And we're going to set that group up as a vertical group. And this is our num dice. What do we call this? Number select screen IC? Or quantity select screen IC? I like that. Quantity select screen IC. So right click, new file, watch kit, interface controller, quantity select screen IC. Hit next there. Create. Go back to our interface builder. Click there. Hook them up. There's our quantity. All right, so we have our screens now. And I'm going to go ahead back to this screen. And we're going to say that this screen is going to, when we select on our cell on our table, this guy's going to take us to this screen through a push. All right, so now we've connected that screen up. So we have our 3 screens in our application set up, and we set the main guy here in the first. So these other 3 from before are kind of our practice. It's our practice run, if you will. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our dice filled in here. And we're going to do that. So when we do our, what was it called, table example, I see this guy right here. So table example IC, in awake with context, we had a number of sides that we kept as a global, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw that into our, what would I call it, dice select screen. So there's our number of sides. We have an array that keeps track of all the sides that we're supporting. All right, and go back to our table example. Inside of awake with context, since this page only loads that table one time ever, since the table always looks the same, we're going to go ahead, we're going to steal all this code. And let's put it inside of our dice select, awake with context. Now, right off the bat, this guy is going to yell at us because we don't actually have an IB outlet set up for our table. So we need to go ahead and do that. So I'll grab that from our table example. We'll steal our IB outlet rather than create it through the drag and drop. Go into dice select, throw that second variable up there. Now we have our outlet. We don't want to forget to hook up that outlet, so let's go back out to our storyboard. Click on our dice select screen. Here's our outlets for our table, and we can go ahead and drag that over to the table. So now we hooked that guy up. Okay, so what do we do inside of Awake with Context? Well, we create an array of all the label names, so all the things we want to ultimately show in our labels. Then we set the number of rows for our table equal to the number of elements here. And the row type is going to be cell, because we're going to be using that cell name that we gave it out in the interface builder. We're going to go through all of our label names, get the current row as a dice row, so as an instance of one of these dudes. And then we'll set his label equal to the label name, and we'll set his image equal to whatever the label name is, .jpeg. So we made sure that when we created our images up here, they're all named identically to the labels with a .jpeg after them. Okay? So, this only happens one time when that guy is originally created. So if I run this application now and I go ahead and just click on my button, that takes me to this screen that has a bunch of disproportionately showing dice, but dice nonetheless. All right, so we'll go and fix that. But we have our rolls, or our possible dice to choose from. Now, when I click on one of these guys, it takes us here. So I already have those guys linking us, and I've done that all with no code. All right, so let's go back. Let's go ahead and fix our image. So go out to our interface storyboard. Go to our image here. And we need to go to the properties for him. And we want to say aspect fit, correct? Actually, is it aspect fit or aspect fill? I think it's aspect fill. Because that'll make it as big as it will possibly be while maintaining its aspect ratio. So we might get some weird different sizes, but no, that's not what I want it to look like.
Remember, it wasn't that, it was the size at the bottom. It's the height. Leave that and then.
Oh, size fit to content.
I think it's the height is the problem. I think if you change height to fixed, it'll work. Not that. The height.
Oh, I see. I see. Oh, make them both. So this guy is. So if we make these guys 50 by 50, that'll be a square, and then we can say aspect fit, or we can say scale to fill, because it only has a 50-50 thing, so it'll scale every one of our images to that. Yeah, that should do it. All right, beautiful. All right, so there's our dice, and no matter which one we click on, it takes us to this next page. Now, we'd like to know which of those guys we clicked on, though. Right? Well, how do we determine that? I've clicked on one of these rows, and it's taken me to the next page. How do I know which of those rows I clicked on? Go ahead.
The override function that we wrote in the table example that has did select at row index.
Okay. So we're going to go into our dice select guy, and we need to add another function. Function we're going to add is one of the functions that has to do with our table views. We're going to override func. Did the table
Yeah, it was that one.
did select row and index. There we go. All right, and then our code in here is going to have to set something. So we know, and we're going to do this through our singleton, right? Did we create a singleton last time?
Should be DiceRoller core.
DiceRoller core, right there. Here's our singleton. So, well, I'll leave those variables right now. So we're going to need to, we'll use num sides. So when I select one of those dice, I need to set the number of sides equal to what was selected. Okay? I'm going to do that in my DiceRoll core. So in here, when I selected a row, this row is going to be associated with one of these sides. So I'll go ahead and say DiceRoller core dot num sides is equal to self dot sides at position row index. Okay, so as soon as we click that row, this guy will get called. We already have the row producing a segue to the next screen. And what we'll do to prove that we received that is on that next screen, our quantity select screen, inside of awake with context, let's go ahead and print out DiceRoller core dot num sides. So by the time we get here, we've already set the value in our singleton, so we have access to it here. So we'll do D8, click there, come over here, still says -1. What does that tell us? Let me come in here, go to our dice select screen. I'm going to say this, print in did select row. So we're going to print out in there. Never got into that screen. Why is that? Why didn't I get into this table? Table doesn't have anything to do with singletons. We've seen this before when we've worked with IB actions. When we use the segue, it supersedes the default calls, right? Okay, so the way I have this set up right now is inside of my storyboard, I have specifically created this segue by dragging here. If I take that out, that's not what I want to do, right? I want to click on this guy, delete him. So let's take that out. We'll take that segue out, and I'll go ahead and run this. And now we'll see that that function gets called. So as soon as we use the auto segue, we took away our ability to deal with how individual rows were selected. Okay? So while it would have been nice to without any programming, handle that segue, as it stands, it's going to be an advantage for us to go ahead and set the value, then manually, programmatically create our segue. So this guy here, that third screen, has to have a name. So we're going to set his identifier as being quantity select screen IC. Quantity select screen IC. All right, so that's going to be the identifier for that guy. Now what we're going to do is back in our dice select, after we set the number of sides, then we can go ahead and say self.push controller with name that, and context we can pass something if we want, but we don't actually need to send anything in there, because we're doing this all through a singleton. So we don't need to use the context to what's called inject data into the next screen. All right, so now we'll still get to that next screen. Except now we know the number of sides. Make sense? Okay, so we controlled how things happened. When we clicked a row, we set our singleton, Then we push the view controller that we wanted to push. All right, so now we go over to our third screen, the quantity select screen. Okay, and this guy is going to allow us to pick a certain quantity. So now we're going to go back, we're going to steal some stuff from our picker example. All right, picker example again. All right, let's just say we're going to allow them to pick between what, 1 and 100 for right now. Fair enough. And at some point we have to have a maximum. What is the maximum number of dice we are going to allow them to roll before the fireball is guaranteed to be an insta-kill? Say 45, 100 d6. I don't care how many hit points your level 22 epic Dungeons and Dragons character has, he's going to die. So we'll say it's 100. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and fill our picker up. Before we were picking between D4, D6, D8, all this stuff. But now what we need to do is we're going to create an array of picker items. Then we're going to probably create an array of values, whether we do it as values or just use it from a loop. So we probably won't do it as arrays. Then we'll go through some number of times, 100 times in our case, and we'll take each picker item, we'll append it, and then set that picker item's title, content image, whatever we're going to do. We're probably just going to work with titles here, right? Okay, so let's steal this code. And again, we have a picker that it's expecting us to have. So let's actually go ahead and give ourselves the picker first. So we're going to give ourselves the outlet for our picker. Put that up top here. All right, so there's the outlet for our picker. Now let's go ahead and let's actually connect that outlet so we don't forget. In order to connect the outlet, we must first give ourselves a picker. So I've already made this vertical. Good, so let's give ourselves a label that says select quantity. Select a quantity. We're going to say this guy's centered. We'll go ahead and drag this all the way across. Actually, that's not what I wanted to say. I wanted to say relative to container. There we go. Let's make sure this guy's relative to the container as well. It's important we make it relative to the container rather than a fixed size. So when we run it on different watch, because there's 2 different watch sizes, the larger watch will have it show skinnier on the screen.
Yeah, develop for one environment. That's it.
It's one environment, one watch. Like, this only works on the female watches. That's probably sexist, but unless you're Steve Caruso, you didn't. Yeah, didn't he trade it in for the
42 the golden dude. You got a gold one that's still pretty.
All right. So we have a label that says select quantity. Let's go ahead and drag our picker in here. So there's our picker. Then we need to select this guy and go ahead and hook our outlet for our picker up. So we'll connect that right there. So now our picker is connected. All right. So we'll go back into our quantity select screen. Actually, we're going to go into our picker example screen so we can steal a bunch of this stuff. Now we'll go to our quantity select screen. So again, because this is only happening one time, we'll go ahead and put this inside of Awake with Context. We're not going to have label names here. Instead, we're just going to have a loop that's going to go through between 1 and less than or equal to 100. Like that. We'll get a new picker item. We'll set the picker item's title equal to the number. Put I in there like that. No image. I don't remember what was captioned.
It like shows up above the picker.
Oh, we probably don't want that in this, right? Or we might not want this, so we'll leave this like this. Yeah, we'll mess with this. Okay. So anyways, we'll leave. We'll just set the title to the string version of whatever our value is. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. Finally, in the end, we'll set the picker's items equal to picker items. All right, fair enough. So hopefully now we have 100 items showing up on our picker. So when we click add roll, it takes us here. We select our dice, takes us here, and then things completely flip out. The picker items. It's a WK picker item. Oh, haha. The very last time it would have been, because I'm doing it off of I, so I need to say I minus 1.
Well, that's not gonna work because you're gonna.
Sure it will be.
Yeah, well, never mind.
It failed on the very
I
last
thought
one.
you were going to start at 0, so I'm like, oh, that's the.
Yeah, I need my number of sides, my number of quantity to start at 1, but I want to access bucket 0 of my array the first time.
Yeah.
All right, so there's my quantities. Yeah.
Look at that.
All right. Now, what might be kind of a cool look for us here is inside of our interface storyboard. Let's go here to this guy. And wasn't there kind of a stack view that looked kind of slick? See how big the values show up in there, though. Is it going to be like a big font, or is it going to be like...
Not at all. When it's in stack view, it only shows images.
Oh, really?
Or
Does it
some
show
other-
caption?
well,
Probably shows
it
caption, but it probably looks
caption at the
stupid.
shop,
Probably,
yeah.
probably just shows a 1 at the very top of
It
the screen.
does.
That's
That's
it.
all it does. Yeah.
Yeah. What
I looked through that.
But if you look at what's focus,
do you want to do? Yeah, so it looks like we have to stick with a list for right now, unless we create a bunch of images for all the numbers. Which we might want to do from a coolness perspective. It might look neater.
That would take forever to scroll through, though.
You think?
because I think it's like if you
Can-
scroll
can-
fast enough, then it'll do
Yeah.
them a lot faster.
Well, for right now, we'll leave it alone.
Yeah. You're expecting people to actually understand how to do that.
It's true.
People are just going to go.
There's the D6. So now we're going to select our quantity. So whatever it ends up getting set on. So now, once we have this, we need to have a way of getting to the next screen, right? All right. So how do we do that? What's our mechanism from going from here to add the dice? Okay, you want a button? All right. Go back in here. Let's go ahead and let's throw the button at the bottom. Well, it probably could be. But I kind of like the look of having the thing in the center. So we'll just say add roll here. All right.
Can we make this in voice command?
Nope.
No, I mean, like, could you?
Potentially. Actually, what I was trying to do with the Apple TV, because I'm writing something similar to this for the new Apple TV, is and they don't let you do it with the API yet, but use Siri.
To roll.
Yeah. So wouldn't it be cool? You're sitting on
Yeah,
your couch
no,
and just
that's
say
what-
3d8,
Right.
and it just rolls
Roll
3d8.
3 dice 8 or something.
And then if
Yeah.
you have a
Yeah, but it doesn't let you get to Siri's voice recognition stuff. But it can let you record audio, and then you can get a third-party parser. But you'd rather use Siri's parser. It's there, right?
Well, then
Who
Could you
knows?
use that for this though? Could you use Siri for this?
I haven't actually looked, but my guess is if they don't let you do it on the Apple TV, they probably don't expose it on
What you
here.
gotta do is build an integration for hue lights. So if you're in different dungeons, you can change like the color of your living room lights. Because HomeKit's active now on Hue.
Okay.
Go make a library that does Siri integration.
Make the lights flash when somebody fires.
That would
a
actually be.
fireball.
I mean, it probably wouldn't be Siri integration because
Well,
that
they'd
would.
probably be-
But you would have to create an equivalent. You could write a library charge for it, and you know, actually, I wonder, does Google have?
Google Voice API or something like
Yeah.
that? Or Cortana? One of the two might have an
Pretty sure,
API.
Google has it. I think they're okay. Google has it.
Okay. Because we might be able to do something like in the cloud, where you send an audio file to the cloud, have it process, send them back the text equivalent.
Right,
and
you
then-
have to parse it.
Yeah, then you can work with the text however you want.
Right.
That'd be kind of slick.
So it comes up with some really interesting invalid errors. D4, what'd you want me to do?
All right, so let's just make sure this looks okay. So there's our, oh, I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
Oh, that you have to.
You have to click in order to
I wonder if that's the case with the
I think
Not
it's
if you
because
put-
the button
if
is
you
just a
group-
little bit off.
a little bit too far, yeah. So if we just shrink the picker down a little bit.
Gotta shrink your picker.
That's good.
Actually, we could probably set the picker's height to be size to fit, no, relative to container.
Definitely.
Can't do size to fit content. That's not going to be right. So
Yeah, it's a little bit too.
yeah, but the height is going to be different depending on the.
Maybe. Just put that button at the top. Doesn't have problems. Or if you put the picker inside
So it looks
of
like
its own
86.
group. Well, if you put the picker inside of its own group, it probably
Right.
wouldn't have an issue.
On mine, I put the button outside of the group, and it worked.
Yeah, put the picker in its own group, and then
Okay.
but that worked too. Just shorten it up.
Well, yeah, but then even if you put the button outside the group, it would be the same thing as this, right?
Yeah, it would look the same. But you don't have to like manually size the picker.
Yeah, so that's probably actually better then. So if we take our add roll button here and we move it, how do I get it outside the group? There's that.
Is your picker in that group?
Picker is, yeah.
Hit the down.
Oh, wait, no, it's
button.
not. It's not.
Well, no wonder it's.
So I could put the picker in here and then leave the add roll out of there. And then the picker can be set to relative to container.
I think it'll display right either way.
Yeah, but that doesn't look good.
Size to fit content.
And I don't want that either. Yeah, that's garbage.
Would it be better on the watch though?
I don't think so. But now if we move that inside, and then we it was 87, 86. Just look at this real quick, make sure it looks good, and then we'll finish up next time. Okay, so this looks good. So the idea here is we'll select our quantity. We're going to have to go ahead and create an IB action that starts, with a default value and is going to set our singleton to whatever we roll, right? And then when we hit add roll, it's going to store it up there so that when we go back to the main screen, it can add that new row. Make sense? All right, so we'll finish writing that on
Friday.
what's today? Wednesday. On Friday, start thinking about the next step of this, and that is saving our roles between multiple runs of the application. If you're playing a game, you want to be able to say 2d6 is, name it. This is my attack. This is my roll for initiative. This is my, my damage. Whatever it is, we want to create those once and then have them available to us from that point forward. Cool?